Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the people who seem the weakest, the ones who cry easily, complain the loudest, and fold under pressure somehow hold invisible strings attached to you. You pride yourself on strength, resilience, endurance. You are the one others lean on when storms arrive. And yet, in moments you don't fully notice, the weak bend your will more effectively than the strong ever could. Isn't that unsettling? Think of the coworker who shirks responsibility, yet somehow ensures others cover for them, or the family member whose perpetual fragility keeps everyone walking on eggshells, adjusting their lives to accommodate, or the partner who, through guilt or helplessness, bends even the strongest personality into submission. Why is it that those who cannot lift the weight of life themselves often make the strongest carry it for them? Is strength, then, not the power to command, but the curse of being commanded by weakness? You may feel the heat of resistance rising in you now. No, that's not true. Strong people control their destinies. Weak people are dependent, not powerful, but pause. If that were true, why do you so often find yourself exhausted not from battles with equals, but from carrying the burdens of those who crumble at the slightest strain? Could it be that weakness is not the absence of power, but a different form of it, a hidden currency in the psychology of human relationships? History whispers to you that this paradox has always existed. Empires fall not only to armies, but to decadence, the softness that seeps in when luxury dulls vigilance. Leaders crumble not because of rival generals, but because of sycophants, flatterers, and manipulators who wrap them in weakness disguised as loyalty. Even in myths, the strongest heroes are often undone not by monsters, but by the fragile and unfaithful lover, a desperate plea, a cry for mercy that undermines their sword. So, ask yourself, who really holds the power, the one with unshakable strength, or the one who can steer that strength without lifting a finger? This is the brutal paradox. Weakness wields a subtler, more insidious power than raw strength. Strength can conquer, but weakness can manipulate. Strength is visible, but weakness is invisible. What is invisible often controls more than what is seen. And here is the deeper, more haunting question. If weakness secretly controls the strong, is strength even strength at all? Or is it simply another mask, easily bent, easily drained, until the strong themselves collapse under the weight of those who could never stand on their own? Think about the subtle mechanics of guilt. When the strong person refuses to give in, the weak deploy their ultimate weapon: fragility, tears, accusations, silence, or helplessness, a tool that forces the strong to reconsider, to soften, to bend. What is guilt but a form of psychological leverage? A chain forged, not in iron but in pity, in empathy, in conscience. And isn't that the most sinister part? The weak do not even need to intend this control. Often their mere existence in fragility is enough. Their collapse becomes the gravity that pulls you down, the void you cannot ignore, the crisis that demands your energy. You think you are rescuing them, when in truth you are obeying them. So here you are, faced with a terrifying recognition. Strength does not protect you from control. In fact, it makes you more vulnerable to it. The stronger you are, the more capacity you have to carry others, and the more likely you are to be manipulated into doing so. The shield of your resilience becomes the very chain that binds you. And if that's true, if weakness can command strength by simply refusing to bear the load, what does that say about the structures of society, of families, of relationships? Could it be that the true axis of control in this world is not power versus power, but power versus weakness? What if the real rulers are not the visibly strong, but the invisibly weak? And more importantly, where does that leave you? Because if you are strong, if you pride yourself on endurance, if you carry others without complaint, then the unsettling truth may be this: you may already be ruled by those you thought depended on you most. To understand why the weak so often control the strong, you must first step into the underworld of the psyche, the place where instinct, fear, and unspoken forces pull at your every choice. The paradox is not simply a trick of circumstance. It is rooted in the deepest structures of human psychology, structures so ancient and invisible that you mistake them for free will. Carl Jung, whose insights cut deeper than almost any other thinker, warned us that what we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves gains power over us. He called it the shadow, the hidden aspects of the self that we repress, deny, or project onto others. Here lies the secret. The weak control the strong because the strong repress their own weakness and, thus, become enslaved by it. Consider this carefully. The person who prides themselves on endurance despises fragility, not just in others, but in themselves. They cannot bear the thought of being weak, helpless, vulnerable, and so, every encounter with weakness in the outside world triggers a hidden recognition of their own denied fragility. When the weak weep, the strong are reminded of the part of themselves they have locked away. Pity is not just compassion, it is the shadow calling from within. To protect the illusion of their own invulnerability, the strong rush to rescue the weak, to silence the discomfort of seeing their own hidden self reflected. But the weak, whether consciously or not, wield this mirror as a weapon. They hold up their fragility, and the strong collapse before it, unable to confront the echo within themselves. Nietzsche saw another dimension of this in his analysis of recent ornament. The weak, he argued, unable to triumph in the open battlefield of strength, create a morality of inversion. They declare the traits of the strong power, dominance, vitality, be evil, and their own traits submission, humility, fragility, to be virtuous. What begins as survival becomes a quiet revolution. Suddenly, the strong are guilty simply for being strong. Their power becomes a burden, their vitality a sin, their independence a constant debt to those who lack it, and guilt what a profound instrument of control it is. Schopenhauer called compassion the basis of morality, but compassion is easily twisted into servitude. It is one thing to feel empathy, it is another to be chained by it. Weakness thrives, not by force, but by moral leverage. By making the strong feel guilty for their strength, the weak bend them into compliance, and thus the roles invert. Strength becomes a prison, weakness becomes a throne. You see this dynamic everywhere, if you dare look closely. In families, the fragile parent or child who manipulates through emotional breakdowns. In workplaces, the underperformer who drains entire teams because we can't leave them behind. In politics, the rallying cry of the oppressed, sometimes genuine, sometimes weaponized, forcing concessions, reshaping systems, all while they're visibly strong, find themselves apologizing for their existence. But to reduce it to mere manipulation would be too simplistic. The deeper issue is existential. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that human beings are condemned to freedom, and that most of us recoil from this unbearable responsibility. Strength means freedom. Strength means carrying the weight of choice, the crushing knowledge that no one is coming to save you. Weakness, by contrast, offers a perverse kind of safety. The world must care for you. If you are weak enough, responsibility dissolves. You are owed. And so weakness becomes not just a state of being, but a strategy, a retreat from the terrifying burden of freedom itself. This explains why strength is so easily bent. The strong are not simply helping others, they are unconsciously envying them, envying the simplicity of weakness, the lack of responsibility, the right to collapse. The strong resent their own strength, even as they cling to it, and in that resentment they are softened, disarmed, undone. But here lies the cruelest irony. Society itself conspires to reward weakness. Modern culture, terrified of suffering, and obsessed with safety, elevates fragility into virtue. Comfort is the new god. Resilience is an old relic. Every institution from schools to governments to media protects the weak, not simply out of compassion, but because weakness is profitable. Weakness consumes, depends, obeys. Strength questions, resists, disrupts. A society built on control needs weakness as fuel, and so the cycle deepens. The strong grow fewer, carrying ever more weight. The weak multiply, drawing ever more strength into their orbit. The paradox intensifies. The very individuals who should lead are bent into servitude, while those who should be dependent sit quietly on the throne of cultural power. Do you see now why the paradox feels so suffocating? It is not just personal, not just social, not just psychological. It is existential. It is embedded in the architecture of human consciousness and culture itself. The strong fear weakness because it exposes what they deny within themselves. The strong bend to weakness because morality and culture demand it. The strong envy weakness because it absolves the unbearable burden of freedom. And the strong are ruled by weakness because society itself rewards fragility over fortitude. But this realization is only the beginning. For if weakness holds this invisible power, what then are its unseen consequences? How does this hidden structure shape the lives we live, the societies we build, the identities we cling to? The answer will unsettle you even more, because the true danger is not that weakness controls strength, it is that weakness reshapes reality itself, until no one can tell where strength ends and weakness begins. You may think the tension between weakness and strength is an individual struggle, something confined to personal relationships or isolated moments of guilt. But look closer. and you'll see its fingerprints across entire civilizations. When weakness quietly rules over strength, it alters not only the behavior of individuals but the trajectory of societies, the myths we believe, even the architecture of reality itself. Imagine this: a man of great vision, courage, and ability rises to lead. His presence inspires, his clarity terrifies, his strength radiates in ways that awaken others, and yet, almost instantly, voices emerge to restrain him. He's too harsh. He should soften his tone. He owes us care, attention, protection. The burden of the weak clings to him like vines wrapping around a tree, and if he resists, if he dares to stand unbent, he is vilified, condemned not for his failures but for his refusal to carry the collective fragility of others. Thus the very qualities that should lift societies upward are punished, while mediocrity, clothed in humility, is rewarded. This is not accidental, it is systemic. Societies build themselves around the paradox. Laws are written to protect the fragile. Institutions are erected to compensate for incompetence. Media narratives glorify the victim while vilifying the resilient as cold, unfeeling, dangerous, and so what begins as compassion mutates into dependency, and what begins as protection hardens into chains. The psychological roots you saw earlier, Jung's shadow, Nietzsche's resentiment, now metastasize into cultural conditioning. Children are taught from the earliest age not to be too strong. Assertiveness is labeled aggression. Independence is reframed as selfishness. Even excellence must be apologized for, lest it offend the fragile sensibilities of those who cannot achieve it. Slowly, generation by generation, strength is not only tamed, it is redefined. What was once called resilience is now called cruelty. What was once celebrated as greatness is now condemned as privilege. Do you see how deep the control runs? The weak do not need weapons to rule. They simply reshape language, morality, and culture until strength has no name left for itself. And in this silence, the consequences multiply. On a personal level, the strong begin to burn out. Quietly, invisibly, they carry more than their share, lifting families, workplaces, communities. Denying themselves rest, they collapse in private while smiling in public. Depression, anxiety, exhaustion, the costs of carrying weakness are written into their bodies. How many pillars of strength have you known who died early, not from lack of ability, but from the weight of invisible demands they could never refuse? Meanwhile, the weak grow weaker still. For every burden carried for them, their muscles atrophy further. Dependency breeds more dependency. Helplessness spreads like a contagion, and with it resentment, entitlement, and annoying hunger that can never be satisfied. The weak who control the strong eventually despise them too, for what they give is never enough. On the societal level, the pattern becomes catastrophic. When weakness governs strength, entire civilizations decline. History shows us this again and again. Rome, once a civilization of resilience and ferocity, grew indulgent, fragile, entitled. The strong were drained by the constant demands of the masses until the empire collapsed under its own weight. Nietzsche foresaw this with chilling clarity. Cultures die not because they are conquered, but because they rot from within, consumed by the inversion of values where weakness becomes virtue and strength becomes vice. And yet, the most insidious consequence is not material decline, it is existential amnesia. A society that elevates weakness forgets what strength even looks like. It forgets that resilience was once possible, that independence was once natural, that greatness was once real. People grow up believing fragility is the norm, that safety is the highest good, that comfort is the ultimate aim of life. They do not notice that their own souls are being starved, their own wills dulled, their own capacity for transcendence erased. What does this mean for you? It means you are already trapped in a world shaped by this paradox. Every time you hesitate to speak your mind for fear of offending, every time you apologize for your abilities, every time you carry more than your share in silence while others play helpless, every time you soften your strength to protect the fragile illusions of others, you are living out the unseen consequences. But the trap is deeper still. For the greatest casualty of weakness, ruling strength is not exhaustion, nor decline, nor even collapse. It is truth. When the weak control the strong, truth itself becomes unbearable. The raw, unsentimental realities of existence, pain, struggle, death, transcendence are banished in favor of comforting illusions. Entire cultures anesthetize themselves with entertainment, medication, and distraction to avoid the stark confrontation with reality that true strength demands. And so the weak do not just control the strong, they rewrite reality itself. They construct a softer, duller world where no one is permitted to shine too brightly, where every edge must be rounded, where every truth must be diluted, and the strong, conditioned to serve, participate willingly until they forget their own nature, until their strength is turned inward against themselves, until they no longer remember what it meant to be free. The paradox has done its work. You live inside its walls, and unless you awaken to it, you will die inside them too. But there is a rebellion, though it is not what you think. To break free is not merely to resist weakness, nor to despise it, nor to crush it. The rebellion requires something far more radical, a reversal so profound it threatens to dissolve the very identity you cling to. Do you want to see what it looks like to break free? To step beyond the hidden prison where weakness rules strength? The rebellion, how to break free. What does it mean to rebel against weakness? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Resist it, overpower it, refuse to bow. Yet this response is still a trap, still shaped by the very dynamics you are trying to escape. To fight weakness directly is to remain bound to it, to define yourself in relation to it, to remain its prisoner. The rebellion must be deeper, subtler, more dangerous. It must cut through not just the chains, but the very idea of chains themselves. Imagine this. You stand in a room surrounded by mirrors. Each reflection shows you carrying burdens, for others softening yourself, diminishing your brilliance. At first you think you must smash the mirrors, destroy the false images, but then you realize the rebellion is not about the mirrors at all. It is about stepping outside the room entirely. The first act of rebellion, then, is refusal. Not loud, not violent, not dramatic, simply refusal. Refusal to carry what is not yours. Refusal to apologize for your strength. Refusal to bend your nature into a shape that pleases others. This is not cruelty, it is truth. For every ounce of energy spent propping up fragility, you lose the chance to build, create, transcend. Every burden carried for another steals life from the part of you that might have soared, but refusal alone is only the beginning. To break free, you must confront your own complicity. After all, who taught the weak to control you? Who taught them that their helplessness would always be met with your strength? You did. With every moment of silent sacrifice, with every act of protection unasked for, with every apology for your own abilities, you reinforced the cycle. To rebel, then, is also to turn inward, to see where your strength has become servitude. Carl Jung called this integrating the shadow. You must confront not just the weakness of others, but the weakness within yourself, the part of you that craves approval, fears rejection, hides behind self-sacrifice because it is safer than standing alone in unapologetic power. Do you see the paradox? The strong often serve the weak because they themselves are secretly afraid of their own strength, afraid of its consequences, afraid of its loneliness. The rebellion, therefore, requires courage of a different kind, the courage to accept isolation, to live unshielded by collective approval, to stand without apology even when accused of arrogance, selfishness, cruelty. Nietzsche once wrote that the higher man must live dangerously, not in reckless adventure, but in the refusal to dilute his own being to comfort the herd. This danger is the essence of the rebellion. You risk not your body, but your belonging. And yet, there is liberation here too. For when you cease apologizing, when you cease carrying, when you cease softening, you begin to remember what strength actually feels like. It is not harshness, it is not domination, it is clarity, fire, radiance. It is the sense of moving in alignment with your own deepest current, without distortion. And in that clarity, something extraordinary happens. You no longer need the weak to define you at all. Their control dissolves the moment you stop participating in it. Consider the story of Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps. Though stripped of freedom, food, and even dignity, he discovered a radical truth, that the one thing no one could take from him was the freedom to choose his own attitude, his own meaning. Even in absolute weakness, he found strength by refusing to surrender his inner sovereignty. This is the rebellion, not the conquest of others, but the reclamation of self. But let us push further. If refusal, shadow integration, and sovereignty are the path, what does life look like once you walk? It looks like radical responsibility. Not responsibility for others' fragility, that was the old prison, but responsibility for your own becoming. No excuses, no deflections, no waiting for permission. Every ounce of energy reclaimed from false servitude is poured into creation, into growth, into the dangerous beauty of living fully. Do you see the inversion? The weak control the strong because the strong accept the bargain. Break the bargain, and control evaporates. Stop carrying what is not yours, and suddenly weakness has no leverage. Stop apologizing for your gifts, and suddenly they shine without restraint. Stop fearing solitude, and suddenly the herd loses its hold. The rebellion is not an attack on weakness, it is the refusal to live beneath it. And perhaps the most shocking truth, when you cease enabling weakness, you do not only liberate yourself, you liberate the weak as well. For so long as you carry their burdens, they never face their own strength. So long as you shield them, they never discover resilience. But when you step back, when you hold your strength without offering it as compensation, they are forced to awaken. Some will collapse. Yes, others will hate you, curse you, brand you, selfish, but just a few will rise. And in rising, they will discover the very strength they once demanded from you. This is the hidden grace of the rebellion. It breaks the cycle not through conquest, but through withdrawal. By refusing to play the game, you force a new one into existence, one where strength can be strength, and weakness can finally learn to grow. But beware, this path is not safe. It will cost you relationships, it will strip away illusions, it will make you a stranger in the world you once tried to serve. But what is the alternative? To live forever in a prison built by fragility. To spend your years apologizing for your own power. To die with your strength still shackled, never fully lived. The rebellion asks everything, but in return, it gives you yourself. And once you have tasted that, once you have stood unbent, unapologetic, unmasked, then and only then are you ready for the final revelation. The ultimate truth is waiting, but it will not flatter you. It will not soothe you. It will dismantle you. Are you ready? The final, most powerful realization here is the truth you have been circling, perhaps fearing. The weak never truly controlled you. Not once. The chains you felt were not forged by their hands, but by your own. You mistook your strength for something dangerous, something that must be hidden, softened, disguised. You chose to believe their trembling when they said, "Do not shine too brightly, or you will blind us." And so, you dimmed yourself. The real prison was not their weakness, it was your belief that you must answer to it. And this is the brutal, liberating realization. No one fears weakness as much as the weak. What they truly fear is your refusal to participate in their theater. They fear the moment you stop bending, stop apologizing, stop compensating, because then they must face themselves without distraction. Do you see it? You feared them because you thought they were holding you down, but they feared you because deep down they knew you could rise at any moment. The balance was always in your favor, you simply refused to see it. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and who you truly are is not fragile, not apologetic, not a servant to the insecurities of others. Who you truly are is something vast, luminous, and terrifying, not because it destroys others, but because it exposes them. Your strength reveals what they lack, your clarity unmasks their illusions, your freedom shatters their excuses, and here lies the paradox. The greatest power you will ever possess is not domination over others, but sovereignty over yourself. When you no longer bend to weakness, not your own, you step into a realm of existence most people never touch, a realm where you are no longer reactive, no longer entangled, no longer bound. You become, in the truest sense, free. Imagine standing on the edge of a mountain at dawn. The world below is still shrouded in shadow, but you are high enough to see the first light breaking the horizon. It does not ask permission to rise. It does not apologize for its brilliance. It simply ascends, because that is its nature. And in its rising, the darkness below begins to dissolve. This is what your strength was meant for, not to serve fragility, not to bend to fear, but to rise, to radiate, to burn away illusions by the sheer fact of your being. But here is the cost of such freedom: loneliness. For a time, you will walk ahead of the crowd, unaccompanied. Many will resent you, some will envy you, a few will try to pull you back. Yet in this loneliness lies purity, the discovery that you do not need the herd to validate you, that your worth is not measured by the comfort you provide others, but by the depth to which you inhabit your own truth. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the Bermenschützer, one who creates values, who does not bow to inherited morality or the demands of the many. He was not glorifying cruelty or arrogance. He was pointing toward a new kind of human, one who stands without apology, one who invents meaning, one who refuses to be shackled by the fears of the weak. And yet the final twist: once you accept this truth, once you reclaim your sovereignty, you will discover something unexpected. Compassion, not the old compassion, the pity that bends, that carries, that enables, but a new compassion, one that looks weakness in the eye without flinching, one that refuses to collude with fragility, one that says, "You too must rise." This compassion is not soft. It does not cradle, it ignites. It does not protect it, challenges. It does not diminish strength to comfort weakness, it demands strength in others by the sheer intensity of its example. And this, perhaps, is the highest form of service you can offer the world, not to hide your light, but to blaze so fiercely that others are forced to awaken to their own. The final, most powerful realization is this: weakness does not secretly control strength. Strength secretly chooses to serve weakness, and the moment you stop choosing, the game collapses. What you feared all along was not their hold over you, it was your own refusal to face the vastness of your power. And now the question returns to you. Sharp as a blade, will you continue dimming yourself to soothe the fragile, or will you rise, unapologetic, into the fullness of who you are? Will you keep playing the game, or will you step outside the room of mirrors once and for all? This is not a gentle choice. It is a choice that will cost you comfort, belonging, safety, but in exchange, it will give you the only thing that was ever truly yours, your life, lived in its raw, uncompromising truth. The weak will cry out. They will call you selfish, arrogant, dangerous. Let them, for their cries are not a sign of your cruelty, but of their awakening. And some, though not all, will eventually thank you, for you will have shown them what was possible. So ask yourself, now, in this moment, what have you been carrying that is not yours? Where have you been apologizing for your own brilliance? Whose fragility has dictated the shape of your life? And are you finally ready to put it down? The world does not need you smaller. The world does not need you apologizing. The world does not need you carrying burdens that were never yours. The world needs you strong, luminous, unbound, because only in your strength can others discover their own. The time has come. Step outside. The mirrors refuse the bargain. Rise, and when you do, the prison dissolves, the false chains fall, and the truth stands naked before you. You were never afraid of their weakness. You were afraid of your strength.